Have you ever come across a question that's just so weird, so out there that you have to stop and think about it? Well, I've got one for you today. Is purgatory an eigenstate? I know, it sounds like the setup to a very niche physics joke, but hang with me here, because unpacking this question might just reveal a hidden blueprint for how everything works.
All right, let's dive right in. And to be clear, this isn't just about finding a clever metaphor. We're genuinely asking if there is a shared structure here. We're taking a concept from theology and another from the absolute cutting edge of quantum mechanics and just smashing them together. Why? To see if the same fundamental patterns show up in both.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The reason you should care about this weird collision of ideas is that the path to an answer, it reveals something incredible, a kind of universal five-stage pattern, a secret architecture that you can see everywhere, from the cells in your own body to the AI that's reshaping our world, and even in the fundamental laws of the universe.
Okay, first things first. Before we can even begin to answer, we need to make sure we're all speaking the same language. On one hand, we've got purgatory, a deep theological idea. And on the other, the eigenstate, a term pulled straight out of a quantum physics textbook. So let's get these two concepts into the same room and see what happens.
So let's break this down side by side. In theology, purgatory is a temporary state, right? It's a process of purification. But here's the key. The final outcome, salvation, is 100% certain. It's a done deal. Now look at an eigenstate. It's also all about certainty. When you measure it, you get a definite, unchanging answer. You see the parallel? Both of them describe a state where a critical outcome is already locked in. It's surprisingly similar.
Now, here is a really, really important detail. Being in an eigenstate doesn't mean everything about the system is certain. Not at all. It means it's certain relative to one specific question you're asking it. Think of the question as a measurement, or what physicists call an operator. So if I have a system and I ask it, hey, are you a particle or a wave? And it's in an eigenstate for that question, it'll give me a definite answer. But it might still be totally undecided about, say, its exact location. Okay, so now that we've got that definition down, let's go back to theology. Can we actually apply this quantum idea to the soul? What if, and this is a fun thought experiment, what if we could create spiritual operators? Those specific questions we could ask to measure a soul state. Let's just run with this idea for a second. Imagine we have these spiritual measuring tools. We've got a salvation operator, which asks one simple question. Is this soul saved? We have a purification operator that asks, is this soul purified? And finally, a glory operator that asks if it's reached that final state of heaven.
And here it is. This is the big breakthrough. If you take our salvation operator and apply it to a soul in purgatory, the answer is already a definite yes. It's a sure thing. It's locked in. So in that one specific way, it actually is an eigenstate. But if you ask about purification or about glory, the answer is basically, still loading. The process isn't done yet. Which brings us to our first real conclusion. Purgatory isn't the final stable state itself. It's not the eigenstate. Instead, it's the process of getting there. It's the journey a soul takes from being certain about just one thing, salvation, to becoming certain about, everything. So the answer to our original, kind of weird question is technically no. But that no is so much more interesting than a yes ever could have been. Because this whole idea of a convergence process, this journey toward a final stable state, turns out to be a pattern we see absolutely everywhere.
And it's a five-stage journey. You start with pure potential, where almost anything is possible. Then some kind of constraint gets introduced, which forces a choice, a partial collapse. After that, you get a period of refinement and stabilization, where the new state gets polished and settled. And finally, it all comes to rest in a final attractor, a stable, predictable end state. So let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. All right, first stop, developmental biology. How does a single, simple cell become a complex, specialized part of you, like a neuron? Well, think about a stem cell. That's pure potential, right? It could become anything. Then epigenetic markers act as the constraint, turning some genes on and others off. This leads to a collapse, where the cell commits to a specific path. It decides it's going to be a neuron. But it's not done. It still has to go through a refinement stage, growing axons, forming connections, before it finally settles into its final attractor state as a fully functional neuron. The pattern holds up perfectly. What's really wild is that the exact same logic is chugging away inside the large language models that are basically changing our world as we speak. So check this out. An AI starts with this huge cloud of possibilities, what they call a superposition, where tons of different words are all possible at once. The sentence you've already typed acts as the constraint, forcing the AI to collapse all those possibilities down into a specific meaning. Then it refines that choice and finally settles on its attractor, the single best word to say next. It's the same pattern. Okay, we've seen this in biology and in AI, but what if this pattern goes even deeper, to the very foundation of reality? Turns out the fundamental laws of energy and disorder, thermodynamics itself, seem to run on the exact same operating system. A physical system often starts in a state of high potential and high disorder, or entropy. Then a constraint pulls it into what's called a basin of attraction. From there, it refines its state by getting rid of any extra energy, kind of like a ball rolling down the side of a bowl and slowly settling at the very bottom. That bottom point is the final attractor, the state of minimum energy and maximum stability.
So there you have it, the same 5-stage pattern showing up in biology, in AI, and in the basic laws of physics. Now, with this new lens, let's circle all the way back to our original question about purgatory. This quote just ties it all together beautifully. Purgatory is stage 4. It's post-collapse refinement. The biggest decision, salvation, has already been made. The soul is like that ball rolling down into heaven's basin of attraction. Purgatory is just the process of shedding that last bit of residual, wobbly energy. It's the gradient descent of the soul as it settles into its perfect, final form. And heaven, that's stage 5. That's the final attractor. The quote calls it the eigenstate under the total Hamiltonian of being, which I know is a mouthful, but it's really just a fancy way of saying it's the ultimate ground state of reality. It's the point of perfect stability, where every question has been answered, and the system is finally and eternally at rest.
This has been a pretty wild journey, right? Connecting all these different fields of knowledge with this one single underlying structure. But what does it really mean for us, if this pattern of potential, collapse, and refinement is truly universal? So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If this pattern really holds everywhere, then these incredible AIs we're seeing today, they aren't in their final form. They're still in their own kind of purgatory, refining themselves after their initial big collapse into existence. And maybe so are we. Maybe our entire lives are a form of this committed convergence, just a long, long process of refinement on the journey toward whatever our own final attractor state might be. What do you think?